My name is Chelsea. I'm 28 years old, and I'm standing in my bustling downtown bakery, Sweet Whisks. 3 years ago, my family laughed when I shared my dream. Today, my pastries are featured in Seattle's food magazines. The sting of their absence at my grand opening still lingers. Just this morning, after a journalist's glowing review went viral, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. We should formalize the family business relationship. Funny how success changes everything. Before I share how I turned mockery into a downtown sensation drop, a comment telling me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had a dream someone dismissed. I grew up in a picturesque suburb outside Seattle in a household where success had a very specific definition. My father Thomas built his reputation as one of the city's sharpest corporate attorneys. My mother Catherine worked as a respected pediatrician at the university hospital. And then there was my older brother Jackson, the golden child, who followed the carefully plotted path to medical school. Our family portrait looked perfect from the outside, but inside those walls, I always felt like the odd piece in the puzzle. While everyone raced toward prestigious careers, I found my joy in our kitchen standing on a stool beside my grandmother Emma. The secret to perfect pastry, Grandma Emma would whisper, her hands guiding mine through the flour, is patience and love. You can taste when someone rushes. Every Sunday afternoon, we'd bake together. Sometimes traditional family recipes passed down through generations, other times creating our own concoctions. The kitchen filled with laughter, and the warm, sweet aroma of vanilla and cinnamon. Those hours with Grandma Emma were sacred. When she taught me how to make her famous apple strudel, I felt like I was receiving something more valuable than gold. You have the touch, Chelsea, she'd say, watching me carefully fold the delicate dough. Some people can practice forever and never get it right. But you were born with it in your hands. My parents would smile politely when neighbors raved about my blueberry muffins, or when friends' parents requested my cookies for school events. They'd nod with measured appreciation when I'd present elaborate birthday cakes I'd spent days perfecting. Such a lovely hobby, my mother would say, patting my shoulder. Good to have interests, my father would add, before steering the conversation toward Jackson's latest academic achievement. The underlying message was always clear. Baking was fine as a pastime, a cute diversion. But real success meant following the family tradition of advanced degrees and professional careers. Chelsea, honey, it's wonderful you enjoy cooking, my mother said when I was 14. But let's focus on your science grades. You need to think about college applications soon. Every accomplishment of mine existed in the shadow of Jackson's achievements. His perfect grades, his student government presidency, his community service awards. At family dinners, he dominated the conversation with stories of his pre-med classes or hospital volunteering, while my parents beamed with pride. Your brother understands what it takes, my father would say, not necessarily to me, but in my presence. He's building a foundation for a meaningful life. When I was 16, I entered the county youth baking competition with my grandmother's apple tart recipe that I'd modified with rosemary and honey. I spent weeks perfecting it, testing different apple varieties, adjusting baking temperatures. The morning of the competition, I carefully boxed my entry, hands trembling with excitement. We'll try to stop by Sweetie, my mother promised, checking her watch. But Jackson's undergraduate graduation ceremony is today, and we need to be there early to get good seats. I nodded, pretending it didn't matter. As I accepted the blue ribbon that afternoon, scanning the audience for familiar faces, the empty seats reserved for my family seemed to mock me. That evening, while the house bustled with relatives celebrating Jackson's graduation, my ribbon sat unnoticed on the kitchen counter. Grandma Emma was the only one who hugged me tight and whispered, "I knew you would win." That night, as celebration sounds drifted up to my bedroom, I made a silent promise to myself. Someday, I would create something so undeniable that even my family would have to see me. When college application time arrived, there was never really a question about what I would study. My parents had mapped it out years in advance, a business degree from my father's alma mater, followed by either law school or an MBA. My own preferences were barely a footnote in these discussions. Finance is practical, my father insisted, reviewing my course selections. It opens doors. Look at your cousin Amanda, she's already being courted by investment firms. I sat in lecture halls learning about market trends and corporate structures, feeling like I was wearing someone else's clothes. The material wasn't difficult, but my heart wasn't in it. I'd look around at classmates furiously taking notes, their eyes lit with genuine interest, and wonder what it felt like to be pursuing something you actually wanted. My dorm room became my sanctuary. My roommate Mia, an art major with bright blue hair and an infectious laugh, quickly became my closest ally. She noticed how I'd brighten when talking about recipes, how I'd spend hours watching baking shows when I should have been studying for finance exams. "You light up when you talk about food," she pointed out one night as I was describing a chocolate ganache technique I wanted to try. I've never seen anyone get so excited about butter ratios. Every Saturday, while my classmates were sleeping off Friday night parties, I'd slip away to a small culinary school downtown that offered weekend workshops for non-students. I'd spend 6 blissful hours learning about laminated dough sugar work and chocolate tempering. The instructors noticed my dedication, often staying late to show me additional techniques. I found a job at Sweet Dreams, a local bakery near campus. The owner, an older woman named Judy, recognized my enthusiasm and gradually entrusted me with more responsibilities. I started with basic tasks, washing dishes and packaging orders. But within months, I was helping develop seasonal menu items and opening the shop on weekend mornings. At night, when the dorm kitchen was empty, I'd experiment with my own recipes. Mia became my willing taste tester, offering honest feedback and sometimes sketching designs for pastries I described. "You know, this is what you should be doing, right?" she'd say, mouthful of my latest creation. "Not that corporate zombie stuff." My double life continued through 4 years of college. I maintained decent grades in my finance courses, enough to keep my parents satisfied during our brief phone calls. Meanwhile, I filled notebooks with recipe ideas and business concepts, dreaming of a space that would combine my grandmother's traditional baking with modern twists. Graduation approached like an oncoming train. My father had already arranged interviews at several financial firms where he had connections. The path was clear and already decided for me. The graduation ceremony itself was predictably overshadowed by news that Jackson had been accepted to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. As we posed for family photos in my cap and gown, my parents could barely contain their excitement about Jackson's achievement. "Your brother will be training at one of the top medical institutions in the world," my father announced to extended family at my graduation dinner. "Following in your mother's footsteps, but aiming even higher." I smiled mechanically through the dinner, picking at my overcooked salmon, while Jackson detailed his plans for specializing in cardiothoracic surgery. Under the table, I clutched a letter I'd received that morning from Judy at Sweet Dreams, offering me a full-time position as assistant baker and expressing confidence in my talent. 3 days after graduation, I sat across from my parents at our dining room table. My hands were sweating as I pushed aside the folder of interview schedules my father had prepared. "I'm not going to take the banking job," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm going to work at Sweet Dreams Bakery. I want to learn the business from the ground up because someday I'm going to open my own place." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then my father laughed, a sharp sound that sliced through the air. "Don't be ridiculous, Chelsea. You have a finance degree. You're not going to waste it decorating cupcakes." "It's not a waste if it's what I love," I countered. My mother reached across the table, her face a mask of concern. "Honey baking is a hobby. It's not a career for someone with your education. Think about security benefits, retirement." "Jackson is building a real future," my father added. "He understands responsibility." The argument escalated, voices rising as years of unspoken tension boiled over. My father called my plan childish fantasy. My mother suggested I might need therapy for throwing away opportunities. When I stood firm, my father delivered the final blow. "If you choose this path, don't expect financial support from us. We didn't pay for an expensive education to see you play shopkeeper." I left the house that night with a suitcase and a resolve that surprised even me. Mia had already moved to the city and offered her couch until I found a place. As I drove away, I glanced at my childhood home in the rearview mirror, wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The apartment Mia and I found was in an old building on the edge of the historic district, with peeling paint and temperamental plumbing. We split the rent for the one-bedroom unit, with me taking the pull-out couch in the living room. The space was tiny, but the rent was manageable on my bakery salary, and the location put me within walking distance of sweet dreams. My first months of full-time work at the bakery taught me more than 4 years of college ever had. I arrived at 4:30 each morning to help prep for the day, learning the rhythm of commercial baking. My hands cracked hundreds of eggs, measured countless cups of flour, and shaped thousands of pastries. I absorbed everything Judy taught me about ordering supplies, managing inventory, and predicting seasonal demands. In the evenings, I'd sit at our wobbly kitchen table with notebooks spread around me, working on business plans and calculating startup costs. The numbers were sobering: commercial kitchen equipment, rent deposits, permits, insurance, initial inventory, marketing, not to mention having enough cash reserve to operate before turning a profit. I started a separate savings account, transferring a portion of each paycheck, however small. "You know what you need," Mia said one night, watching me clip coupons to save on groceries. "A rich boyfriend who loves pastry." "What I need is about $50,000, I countered, rubbing my tired eyes. Our building's landlord, Martin, became an unexpected ally in my journey. A retired small business owner himself, he often stopped by to fix minor issues in our apartment and would stay for coffee and whatever baked goods I had brought home. The trick to staying in business, he advised, dunking a biscotti I'd made into his coffee, isn't just making something good, it's managing your cash flow and knowing your market. Who are your customers? What makes them choose you over the other guy? Martin introduced me to free small business resources in the community and helped me refine my business plan. He became the mentor I desperately needed, believing in my vision when my own family dismissed it. 6 months into my new life, my parents invited me to Sunday dinner. Despite my reservations, I accepted, hoping time had softened their stance. I brought a box of French macarons I'd been perfecting, each one delicate and precise. The dinner began pleasantly enough, with polite questions about my apartment and general life. Then, summoning my courage, I shared my developing business plan, explaining how I was saving for startup costs and researching potential locations. I found a small course on small business accounting. I explained, excited to share how I was applying my finance background after all. And I'm working on building a social media presence to start gathering followers before I even open. My father's laugh cut me off. "Chelsea, this fantasy has gone on long enough. You're working as a shop assistant, making what, $15 an hour. You'll never save enough to open a business. The failure rate for new restaurants is over 60% in the first year," Jackson added, with the clinical detachment of delivering a terminal diagnosis. 90% within 5 years. "We're worried about you, honey," my mother said. "This isn't a practical plan. You could be building a real career by now." My father leaned forward, his expression serious. "You'll be bankrupt within 3 months if you somehow manage to open this bakery. Then what, you'll have wasted years of your life and have nothing to show for it." Those words lodged themselves in my mind, replaying during quiet moments when doubt crept in. Bankrupt within 3 months. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I feared he might be right. The rejection from traditional bank loans only reinforced my insecurities. Too young, too inexperienced, not enough collateral or proven business history. Each denial letter seemed to echo my father's prediction. But for every moment of doubt, there was a counterbalance of support. Judy promoted me to head baker when her longtime employee retired. Customers began specifically requesting my specialties. Mia designed beautiful graphics for my future bakery concept, bringing sweet whisks to life on paper. I also found a mentor in Alex, the head pastry chef at a well-regarded restaurant downtown. We met at a food industry networking event, and he offered to let me shadow him on my days off. Under his guidance, I refined my techniques and learned to work with ingredients I'd never considered before. "You have good instincts," Alex told me after watching me adapt a recipe on the fly when an ingredient wasn't available. "That's something you can't teach. The rest is just practice." Between my regular job shadowing Alex and taking online courses in small business management, I barely slept. But with each passing month, my dream inched closer to reality, despite my family's continued skepticism. Almost 2 years after graduating college, I spotted a "for lease" sign in the window of an old bookstore in the historic district. The space had been vacant for months, its interior dusty and neglected. But I saw past the grime to the possibilities. high ceilings with original tin tiles, exposed brick walls, large windows that would flood the space with morning light and showcase displays to passers-by. The rent was lower than expected due to the building's condition and the owner's eagerness to fill the vacancy. After 3 meetings and intense negotiation, I signed a lease with a clause allowing me to renovate before opening. Martin co-signed, believing in me when no bank would. The space needed everything: plumbing updates for commercial kitchen requirements, electrical upgrades for industrial equipment, new flooring, paint, lighting. The estimates from contractors were staggering, far beyond my savings. "We'll do it ourselves," Martin declared after reviewing the quotes. "I used to be in construction. Between my knowledge and your friends, we can handle most of it and only hire specialists for the code-critical stuff." I took out a small business loan that covered just a fraction of what I needed, combining it with my life savings and a zero-interest credit card I hoped to pay off before the promotional period ended. Every dollar was accounted for with almost no margin for error. The renovation became a second full-time job. I'd work my shift at Sweet Dreams, then head straight to the new space, often working until midnight before starting the cycle again the next day. Martin rewired light fixtures and repaired damaged floorboards. Mia designed and painted a stunning mural of vintage kitchen utensils on one wall. Fellow food industry friends showed up on their days off to help paint, clean, and assemble furniture I'd found at thrift stores and refinished. The neighborhood took notice of our efforts. The owner of the coffee shop across the street brought us espresso during long work days. The bookstore owner next door offered shelving units they no longer needed. The local hardware store extended credit when I ran short between paychecks. Each small kindness reinforced what I was creating wasn't just a business, but a community space. I decided to name it Sweet Whisks, as a nod to both my craft and the whispering encouragement my grandmother had given me throughout childhood. "You're creating magic, Chelsea," she'd say, watching me whisk ingredients into something greater than their parts. Grandma Emma had been my one consistent family supporter, calling regularly to check on my progress and sending small checks for flour money that I knew strained her fixed income. I designed my menu around core recipes she'd taught me, updated with contemporary twists. Her apple tart became an apple rosemary galette. Her simple vanilla cake evolved into a vanilla bean cake with lavender buttercream. Each item carried a piece of our shared history while creating something new. While renovations progressed, I spent evenings testing recipes in my apartment kitchen, refining techniques and adjusting for commercial production. Mia coordinated impromptu tasting parties, inviting friends and neighbors to sample and provide feedback. I kept meticulous notes on every comment, determined to perfect each item before opening day, 2 weeks before my planned opening disaster struck. The used commercial mixer I'd purchased, a cornerstone investment that had strained my budget, died with a grinding metallic screech during its first test run. The repair estimate exceeded the cost of the machine itself. I sat on the bakery floor surrounded by renovation dust and cried for the first time since starting this journey. Without a working mixer, I couldn't open. Without opening on schedule, I'd burn through my minimal financial cushion, paying rent on an unused space. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Alex. "The restaurant is upgrading equipment," he said. "We have a 5-year-old Hobart mixer that's still in great shape. The owner says you can have it if you credit the restaurant on your menu as a supporter." It wasn't just the mixer. Other restaurant owners Alex had contacted contributed used but serviceable equipment: a second-hand refrigerator, a pastry case with a minor crack sheet, pans, and tools. The generosity of these established businesses toward a potential competitor moved me deeply. The night before opening, I stood in the completed space, hardly believing the transformation. The morning sunlight would stream through newly cleaned windows onto fresh white walls and the colorful mural. Glass display cases waited to be filled with pastries. Small cafe tables with mismatched vintage chairs created a cozy seating area. Behind the counter, professional equipment stood ready. I sent formal invitations to my entire family for the grand opening. My hands trembled slightly as I addressed my parents' envelope, including a handwritten note. "I would love for you to see what I've built. It would mean everything to have your support tomorrow. Love, Chelsea." I went home that night with equal measures of terror and anticipation, setting my alarm for 2:00 a.m. to begin baking for my first official day as a business owner. Opening day arrived with a perfect spring morning. I'd been up since 2 a.m. preparing pastries and breads in careful batches, timing each item to be fresh for the 7 a.m. opening. Mia arrived at 5:30, arranging flowers on tables and helping stock the display cases as I pulled the final trays from the ovens. "These look incredible," she said, arranging my signature cardamom morning buns on a vintage cake stand. "People are going to go crazy for them." By 6:45, I was stationed behind the counter in a crisp apron embroidered with the Sweet Whisks logo Mia had designed. Through the front windows, I spotted a small group of people already waiting, including several regulars from Sweet Dreams who had followed my journey on social media. My heart raced with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. As the minutes ticked by, I kept glancing toward the door, watching for my family. I'd reserved the best table with a reserved sign, set with a special selection of pastries I knew each of them would enjoy. My father's favorite almond croissants, my mother's preferred lemon tarts, cinnamon rolls for Jackson, who devoured them as a teenager. At precisely 7 a.m., Mia unlocked the door with a flourish, and our first customers streamed in with genuine excitement. The morning passed in a blur of transactions, compliments, and the constant hum of the espresso machine. Many customers took photos for social media, spreading the word about the new bakery in real time. Every time the door chimed, my eyes darted up, searching for familiar faces. Every time my phone vibrated, I checked it quickly, hoping for a message explaining their delay. By noon, the reserved table remained untouched, a conspicuous island in the otherwise bustling space. "Maybe they're coming for lunch instead," Mia suggested, gently noticing my frequent glances toward the door. The afternoon crowd brought a steady stream of customers, but no family members. As closing time approached, I accepted the reality they weren't coming. I removed the reserved sign and offered the special pastry selection to our last customers of the day. When we finally locked the doors at 4 p.m., I should have been celebrating. The day had exceeded my financial projections. We'd sold out of nearly everything. Customers had been enthusiastic, and many promised to return. By any objective measure, the opening had been a success. Instead, I felt a hollow ache as I counted the register and recorded the day's sales. All this work, all this risk, and the people whose approval I'd sought most couldn't even show up to see it. After Mia left, I sat alone at one of the small tables, finally allowing the exhaustion of the day to settle over me. My phone buzzed with a message from Jackson. "Sorry we couldn't make it today. Dad's colleague invited us to his lake house for a barbecue. Looked like you were busy anyway from the Instagram posts I saw. Congrats." The casual dismissal stung worse than no acknowledgement at all. My grand opening, the culmination of years of work and sacrifice, had been less important than an impromptu barbecue. I closed up the shop with tears blurring my vision, the day's triumph tainted by their absence. That night, despite bone-deep exhaustion, I lay awake replaying every interaction with my family, wondering what I could have done differently to earn their support. The logical part of me recognized their behavior reflected their limitations. Not mine, but the emotional wound ran deep. As I scrolled through social media before finally falling asleep, I noticed something unexpected. Customers had posted dozens of photos of my pastries, tagging the bakery, and adding enthusiastic comments. "Best croissant in the city. This place is going to be huge. Can't wait to bring my friends tomorrow." A tiny spark of vindication flickered in my chest. Perhaps I didn't have my family's approval, but I had created something that brought genuine joy to others. Maybe that would have to be enough. The first months of running Sweet Whisks tested every ounce of my determination. I established a punishing routine, arriving at 3 a.m. to begin the day's baking, working continuously until closing at 4 p.m., then preparing doughs that needed to rest overnight before collapsing into bed by 9 p.m. to start again the next day. Despite the exhaustion, there was undeniable joy in watching people experience my creations. Regulars began to form their orders, becoming so predictable I'd have them ready when they walked in the door. A group of retirees claimed a corner table each morning, dubbing themselves the Whisks Whisperers, and offering enthusiastic feedback on new items. Word spread organically through the neighborhood. I couldn't afford traditional advertising, relying instead on social media posts and the powerful currency of word of mouth. Each positive review on Yelp or enthusiastic Instagram post brought new customers through the door. After the first month, I could afford to hire Linda, a culinary arts student who worked mornings before her afternoon classes. Her help allowed me to occasionally step away from production to interact with customers, learning their names and preferences, building the community atmosphere I had envisioned. The learning curve was steep. I made rookie mistakes like ordering too many perishable ingredients one week and scrambling to incorporate them into specials before they spoiled, or underestimating holiday demand and selling out by mid-morning, disappointing afternoon customers. Each misstep became a lesson, forcing me to refine systems and improve forecasting. Just as I established a comfortable rhythm, a national bakery chain opened 2 blocks away, their grand opening featuring free coffee and pastry samples that drew crowds past my suddenly quiet shop. Their corporate backing allowed for splashy marketing and deeply discounted prices I couldn't hope to match. For a week, my sales dropped dramatically. I stood in my empty bakery, the specter of my father's prediction haunting me, bankrupt within 3 months. Maybe he'd only been wrong about the timing. Rather than compete directly, I decided to lean harder into what made Sweet Whisk's unique personal connection and creativity. I developed a signature item called Emma's Comfort, an apple cinnamon bread pudding based on my grandmother's recipe, served warm with a vanilla bean custard sauce. The homey nostalgic dessert quickly became our most requested item. I started a Baker's Choice subscription, where regular customers could prepay for a weekly surprise pastry, giving me guaranteed income and creative freedom. I hosted small evening workshops teaching basic baking skills, building a community of supporters who valued the personal touch a chain could never provide. Slowly, customers returned. Many admitted to trying the chain, but preferring our quality and atmosphere. By the end of our 6th month, we'd not only recovered, but expanded our customer base. Then came a blow I wasn't prepared for. My grandmother Emma, my greatest supporter and inspiration, passed away suddenly from a heart attack. I learned about it not from my family, but from my aunt, who called me directly, knowing how close we'd been. "The funeral is tomorrow," she said gently. "Your parents said they tried to reach you." They hadn't. No missed calls, no messages. Whether an intentional exclusion or convenient oversight, the result was the same. By the time I received the news, it was too late to arrange coverage for the bakery to attend the service being held 3 hours away. I closed Sweet Whisks for the first time since opening, placing a simple sign on the door, "Closed due to family bereavement." The physical act of turning the key and walking away felt symbolic of the larger grief consuming me. For a week, I moved through life in a fog of loss. Emma had been my champion, the one family member who saw and valued me exactly as I was. Without her quiet encouragement, the achievement of opening Sweet Whisks felt suddenly hollow. Linda and Mia took shifts at the bakery, following my recipes as best they could, keeping the business running while I processed my grief. When I finally returned, I brought with me a new collection of pastries, each one inspired by a memory of my grandmother. The Emma Collection. I called it, with a small card explaining each item's connection to her. The blackberry hand pies she'd taught me to make with fruit we'd picked together, the shortbread cookies that were her afternoon tea ritual, the spiced apple cake that had filled her house with warmth every fall. Customers embraced these personal offerings, often sharing their own memories of family recipes and traditions. The bakery became a place of shared nostalgia and comfort, deepening the connections with our community. 8 months after opening, I received an unexpected visitor. Sarah Jenkins, a well-known food writer for the city's most prominent lifestyle magazine, came in for coffee and a pastry one unremarkable Tuesday morning. I recognized her immediately from her byline photo, but tried to maintain my composure as I served her an almond croissant and cappuccino. She returned the next day trying the cinnamon morning bun, and the day after that ordering Emma's comfort bread pudding. On her 4th visit, she introduced herself properly and asked if I'd be willing to share my story for a feature she was developing on hidden culinary gems in the city. The article published the following month was titled, "Sweet Whisks, the Hidden Gem, Redefining Downtown's Pastry Scene." Sarah wrote eloquently about the quality and creativity of our offerings, the warmth of the atmosphere, and my journey from finance graduate to bakery owner. She highlighted the Emma Collection, describing it as a testament to how food preserves memory and builds community across generations. The morning the magazine hit newsstands, there was a line outside Sweet Whisks that stretched around the block. We sold out completely by 10 a.m. The next day, I quadrupled production and still couldn't meet demand. The day after that, local television news asked to film a segment on the bakery that had captivated the city's imagination. In the midst of this whirlwind, my phone buzzed with a text message from a number I hadn't seen on my screen in months. My father. Saw the article. Impressive coverage. We should formalize the family business relationship soon. Call me. No congratulations. No acknowledgement of prior dismissal. Just a swift pivot to position himself advantageously now that success seemed assured. Within hours, my mother called, her voice warm, with a pride that had been notably absent before. Darling, we always knew you were talented. Your father and I are so excited to see you getting the recognition you deserve. Jackson texted next. Nice write-up. Dad says there might be investment opportunities. I've been thinking about diversifying from medicine anyway. After 8 months of silence, after missing my opening, after excluding me from our grandmother's funeral, now they wanted to formalize a relationship with my business. Now that a prominent publication had validated my work suddenly, they were interested in claiming a connection. I set my phone aside without responding, focusing instead on preparing for the next day's unprecedented demand. The bakery that had been dismissed as a fantasy, the dream they had laughed at, was now apparently worthy of the family name. The sudden surge of success after Sarah's article created both opportunities and challenges. The immediate increase in customers forced me to hire 2 additional staff members and expand production capabilities. I negotiated with the building owner to lease the vacant storage space next door, knocking through a wall to create a larger kitchen. With the business growing rapidly, I hired a financial advisor to help manage the expansion and create a sustainable long-term plan. My finance degree finally proved useful as I navigated contracts, projections, and investment decisions. A week after their initial messages, my parents and Jackson appeared at the bakery during a busy Saturday morning rush. They stood out immediately dressed in business casual among the weekend crowd of relaxed locals. I spotted them from the kitchen watching through the pass-through window as they surveyed the space with evaluating eyes. Linda approached me, wiping flour from her hands. There are people here saying they're your family. They want to speak with you. I took a deep breath, removed my apron, and stepped into the front of the house. My mother rushed forward first, embracing me, as though we'd seen each other yesterday, not 8 months ago. Chelsea, darling, this is wonderful, she exclaimed, gesturing around the packed bakery. We are so proud of what you've accomplished. My father extended his hand in a businesslike manner. Impressive operation you've built here. The article wasn't exaggerating. Jackson hung back, offering a casual nod. Place looks good, sis. I invited them to sit at a small table in the corner, away from the main customer flow. Linda brought over a selection of pastries and coffee without being asked, giving me a supportive smile before returning to the counter. We've been discussing your bakery success. My father began, cutting straight to his agenda. I think there's significant potential for expansion. Multiple locations, possibly wholesale distribution to upscale grocers. With the right investment and business guidance, this could become a serious enterprise. I've already developed an expansion plan, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. My financial advisor and I have been working on sustainable growth strategies. Financial advisor. My father looked surprised, as though he couldn't conceive of me making such decisions independently. Well, as your father and someone with extensive business connections, I should be involved in those discussions. We're thinking family business, my mother added, her smile bright, but her eyes calculating. Your father could handle the business end. I could assist with staff management. And Jackson has expressed interest in contributing capital for expansion. Jackson nodded. I've been looking for investment opportunities. Medicine has become so bureaucratic, not like when Mom practiced. Might be good to diversify. I sat silently for a moment, processing their proposal. After years of dismissing my dream, after laughing at my plans, and predicting my failure after missing every milestone of this journey, they now wanted to step in and claim partial ownership of my success. What exactly would I do in this family business structure? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. You'd continue what you do best. My father replied with a confident smile. The baking, the creative side. We'd handle the business aspects, the parts where your experience is limited. The irony was palpable. They still didn't see or value what I'd accomplished. In their eyes, I was still just a baker who needed their superior business acumen, despite having successfully launched and grown a business entirely without their help. I've managed the business aspects just fine so far, I pointed out, from securing the lease to renovation staffing, inventory management, and financial planning. The bakery has been profitable since the third month. Yes, but think bigger, my father pressed. With our connections and business experience, we could turn this into a regional brand, maybe even national eventually. As they outlined their vision for my bakery's future, I realized they hadn't asked a single question about my own goals or vision. They hadn't inquired about the journey of the past year, the challenges I'd overcome, or the community I'd built. They saw Sweet Whisks not as the fulfillment of my personal dream, but as a business opportunity they could optimize and control. I appreciate the offer, I said, finally interrupting my father's explanation of corporate structure options. But I'm not interested in a family business arrangement. Their expressions of shock would have been comical under different circumstances. Chelsea, my mother began, her tone shifting to one I recognized from childhood disagreements. Don't be hasty. This is a significant opportunity. An opportunity for whom? I asked. When I told you about my dream to open this bakery, you laughed. Dad predicted I'd be bankrupt in 3 months. None of you came to my opening day. You didn't include me in Grandma Emma's funeral arrangements. For 8 months, I've built this business without any support or even acknowledgement from my family. Now that it's successful, suddenly you want to formalize a relationship. My father's expression hardened. That's unfair. We were concerned about your financial security. Any parent would be. Concern would have looked like checking on me, offering advice when asked, showing up to see what I'd created, I replied. What you demonstrated wasn't concern. It was dismissal. Jackson, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, leaned forward. Look, not everyone hits a home run on their first swing like you did. Some of us followed the path we were supposed to and found it's not what we expected. Is it so wrong to want to be part of something successful? His honesty surprised me. For the first time, I glimpsed that my brother, the golden child who had seemingly done everything right, wasn't happy with where that path had led him. This isn't about success, I said, softening my tone slightly. This is about respect. Sweet Whisks isn't just a business opportunity. It's the manifestation of a dream you all dismissed. It represents every early morning, every late night, every moment of doubt I pushed through without your support. My mother reached across the table for my hand, which I gently withdrew. We're your family, Chelsea. Families should work together. Family is more than DNA, I replied. It's showing up. It's supporting each other even when you don't understand the choices being made. The people who helped me build this bakery, who believed in me when you didn't, they've been more family to me this past year than you have. The conversation grew increasingly tense as my parents tried various angles to change my mind, from guilt about family loyalty to warnings about the difficulties of continued solo operation. Eventually, they left with strained goodbyes and a promise to talk more when you've had time to think it through. After they departed, I returned to the kitchen and lost myself in the comforting rhythm of rolling dough. With each fold and turn, I felt lighter, as though I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years, the need for their approval. In the weeks following my family's visit, I experienced a surprising sense of liberation. The confrontation had forced me to articulate what Sweet Whisks truly meant to me beyond just a business venture. It wasn't simply about proving my family wrong or seeking their validation. It was about creating something authentic that reflected my values and vision. This clarity led me to seek out a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Keisha Williams helped me untangle the complex emotions around my family's conditional support and my own deeply ingrained desire for their approval. You've been chasing acceptance that was always contingent on fitting their definition of success, she observed during one session. What would it feel like to release that need entirely? It was a profound question that shifted my perspective. I began to recognize how much energy I'd spent trying to translate my achievements into terms my family would value, rather than fully embracing my own metrics of success. Meanwhile, Sweet Whisks continued to flourish. The initial rush from Sarah's article stabilized into sustainable growth. I used the increased revenue to improve working conditions rather than just expanding output. I shortened my own hours by hiring a skilled assistant baker, giving myself one full day off each week. I provided health insurance for all full-time employees and created a profit-sharing system so the team benefited from our collective success. The bakery became a true community hub. I started a community table program where anyone could sign up to share the large table in our corner, encouraging strangers to connect over coffee and pastries. We hosted monthly fundraisers for local causes, donating a percentage of sales from specific items. Linda graduated from culinary school and accepted my offer to become full-time assistant manager. Her fresh perspectives and organizational skills complemented my creativity and technical knowledge, making us an effective team. My mother began making tentative efforts at reconciliation, sending occasional text messages checking on me or commenting positively on Sweetwhisk's social media posts. I responded politely, but maintained the emotional boundaries I'd established with Dr. Williams' guidance. 6 months after our confrontation, my mother visited the bakery alone. Unlike the previous visit, she came without an agenda, simply ordering coffee and sitting quietly at a corner table. When I approached her table, I was struck by how uncertain she seemed, a stark contrast to the confident professional I'd grown up with. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began hesitantly, "about family showing up. I haven't been good at that, have I?" The simple acknowledgement opened the door to a more honest conversation than we'd ever had. She shared her own struggles with expectations, how she'd internalized her parents' definitions of success and inadvertently passed those rigid standards to her children. For the first time, I glimpsed the person behind the role of mother, with her own insecurities and regrets. Our relationship began a slow, cautious rebuild based on who we actually were, rather than who we expected each other to be. She started visiting the bakery regularly sometimes, just to sit and observe the operation with genuine interest. Occasionally, she'd offer to help with simple tasks during busy periods, rolling up the sleeves of her expensive blouses, to wash dishes, or restock napkins. My father remained distant, our interactions limited to brief exchanges at the few family gatherings I attended. Jackson and I established an awkward truce, acknowledging that we'd both been shaped and sometimes damaged by our parents' expectations, though in different ways. Meanwhile, I continued building my chosen family. Mia, despite her busy graphic design career, remained my closest friend and creative consultant. Martin, my former landlord and renovation mentor, became a surrogate grandfather figure, stopping by the bakery several times a week for coffee and conversation. The Sweet Whisks team expanded to include people who brought their unique talents and perspectives. Teresa, a retired teacher who managed our front counter with warmth and efficiency. Daniel, a young man from the neighborhood youth program, who showed remarkable talent for decorative work. And Jasmine, a business student who helped refine our systems while learning practical applications for her studies. A year and a half after opening, I faced a pivotal decision when a popular morning show contacted me about appearing on their nationally televised cooking segment. The exposure would certainly boost business further, potentially opening doors to the kind of expansion my father had envisioned. The segment was scheduled to film on Mia's 30th birthday, a milestone she'd been planning to celebrate with an intimate dinner party for months. When I explained the scheduling conflict, everyone assumed I would choose the television opportunity. "You have to do the show," Mia insisted. "We can celebrate my birthday anytime. This is huge for Sweet Whisks." I considered the opportunity, carefully weighing the potential business benefits against what truly mattered to me. In the end, I declined the television spot, choosing instead to be present for someone who had consistently shown up for me. That decision clarified my priorities more powerfully than any therapy session. Success on my terms meant building a business that supported a balanced, meaningful life, not sacrificing personal connections for endless growth. I did accept a different media opportunity the following month, one that aligned better with my values. A documentary series about small businesses with social impact featured Sweet Whisks, highlighting our community initiatives and ethical business practices, rather than just our delicious pastries. As Sweet Whisks approached its second anniversary, I reflected on the journey from dream to reality. The bakery had become everything I'd hoped for and more, a thriving business, yes, but also a community gathering place. a creative outlet, and a vehicle for positive impact. My path hadn't followed the trajectory my family had planned for me. It had been messier, riskier, and infinitely more fulfilling. I had built Sweet Whisks initially to prove something to my family, but I continued running it for myself and the community that had embraced us. The true measure of success wasn't found in expansion plans or profit margins, though those were healthy. It was in the regular customers who trusted us to provide treats for their most meaningful celebrations. It was in the team members who found purpose and growth in their work. It was in the freedom to create a business that reflected my values and supported the life I wanted to live. I had learned that validation from others, even family, was ultimately less important than being true to my own vision. The bakery that began as a dream dismissed by those closest to me had become the vehicle for my most important life lesson. Success is meaningless without authenticity and connection. So, have you ever had to choose between following expectations or pursuing your passion? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life journeys. Remember, sometimes the people who believe in you most aren't the ones you expected, and that's okay. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to trust your own path wherever it might lead.